Snapshots Lesson 7 Birth by A.J. Cronin. A.J. Cronin, in full Archibald Joseph Cronin, was born in July 19, 1896 in Scotland and died on January 6, 1981 in Switzerland. He was a Scottish novelist and physician whose works combining realism with social criticism won a large Anglo-American readership. Summary of the lesson. Andrew Manson had just completed his study of medicine. He began his medical practice as an assistant to Dr. Edward Page in a small town of Ballinelly. He loved a girl, Christine, but his experience was disappointing. It was nearly midnight. When he reached Brangower, he found Joe Morgan waiting for him. Joe had been married for nearly 20 years, and now his wife was expecting her first child. Joe had been waiting there for an hour. The labor pains had begun before time. Andrew went into the house for his bag. Together they set out for number 12 Blaelina Terrace. The doctor had never imagined that night would influence his whole future in that town. Andrew examined the patient and could understand that it would take some time for the delivery to take place. He took a break. In this period, Andrew's mind started wavering in stray thoughts. He started thinking about Brenwell, who was foolishly devoted to a woman who deceived him knowingly. Then he thought of Edward Page, who was married to the ill-natured Bloodwin and was now living unhappily apart from his wife. Andrew thought all marriages were a dismal failure. In the meantime, Andrew had to go back to attend to the patient. The subsequent section narrates how after an hour-long harsh struggle, a child was born towards the dawn. But the child was stillborn. When Andrew gazed at the lifeless form, he shivered with horror. Then he looked at the mother. Andrew had to make a choice after the birth of the child, to save the child or perform his duty towards the child's mother, to save her life too. He gave the child to the nurse and turned his attention towards Susan Morgan. Susan lay collapsed, almost pulseless. The doctor injected the medicine and after some frantic efforts, let her out of danger. Andrew asked about the child. The midwife was thoroughly frightened. Taking it as a still child, she had dumped it beneath the bed amongst soaked newspaper. Andrew pulled out the child. The child was perfectly formed. Andrew could understand that it was a case of suffocation due to lack of oxygen and excess of carbon dioxide in the blood. Andrew started giving the necessary treatment. He did not lose heart. The midwife again and again told him that it was a stillborn child, but Andrew did not heed. He continued with his treatment. Andrew's mind raced back to a case he once had seen and the treatment used there. He asked for hot water and cold water and basins too. He laid the child on a blanket and began the method of respiration. Andrew was feeling a sense of defeat and hopelessness. The midwife was watching him in dismay and astonishment. The old woman stood there leaning against the wall. He remembered how keen she was to have a grandchild. Like some juggler, he first put the child into the ice cold water and then into the steaming hot water. 15 minutes passed. He was all sweat and panting. The floor was in a mess. His own hands were wet and slippery. He almost dropped the child like a white fish. The midwife observed that the child was stillborn, but Andrew did not heed her. He still made another attempt to revive the child. The child was gasping now. A bubble of mucus came from one tiny nostril. The limbs were no longer boneless. The white skin slowly turned pink, and finally the child cried. He rubbed it with a rough towel, pressed and released its chest with both hands, and then, as a miracle, he felt a short movement, him almost faint. He redoubled his efforts. At last, Andrew heaved a sigh of relief. He handed the child to the nurse. He told the entire story to Joe standing outside and walked down the street with some miners with a sense of deep satisfaction that he could achieve something great.